If you are interested in acquiring any of my overkills tutorial guides from Microsoft Flight Simulator, or simply interested in supporting the channel, please consider joining us on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides, as well as any future releases that come down the road. Patreon link can be found in the description below. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and today we are back talking about the TBM-850 and its latest update. There's been some pretty awesome and significant changes coming to the aircraft that I'm really happy came out today, given the fact that I am inches away from releasing the TBM-850 tutorial guide that's going to be available on Patreon. Guys, that guide was going to release tonight. I have a few changes I have to make now based on some of the performance numbers and changes that have happened with it. Nothing crazy. So we're just delaying it by one more day. So if you guys are interested in a TBM-850 full flight tutorial guide from cold and dark in San Francisco all the way to cold and dark in Las Vegas using the working title GNS 530, please consider joining me on Patreon. Patreon subscribers tier 2 and above, as you guys know, have access to this guide as well as every other guide that I put out. So really awesome stuff, guys. This aircraft is a dream already, and I'm blown away to even hear about some of the changes that happened in this latest release. So let's go ahead and start talking about them. The first thing that we're going to talk about is aerodynamics. Quote unquote, significantly improved aerodynamics. All airfoils and control surface dimensions now match the POH values. The aircraft now feels heavier or has a heavier feeling for increased stability in gusty or turbulent conditions. Unusual trimming tendencies have been eliminated with adjustments to the propeller torque reactions, and we're going to talk about that more in a minute here. The takeoff trim positions are now more accurate to the real-world POH. I thought they were pretty on point before. Honestly, I haven't had any issues with that, but they've refined it even further. And adjustments to the motor propeller simulation and aerodynamic coefficients have resulted in increased drag on approaches, meaning that the aircraft will be easier to slow down and will decelerate rapidly once you get into ground effect while under flight idle. So the aircraft's going to be much easier to slow down. It's going to be much easier to maintain in or stabilize in windy or nasty conditions, and just the overall flying of the aircraft you should notice an improvement. Here's the other cool one. Massive, quote unquote, again, massive improvement to Propeller Beta simulation. Now, for those of you who may not know, what is beta? Beta is essentially a turboprop terminology. What it basically means, it's the range at which the aircraft, or the propeller I should say, is no longer generating any thrust. This can be used on approaches. You know, when you go into flight idle position, I believe it's just, and again, I'm still learning myself, okay, because the TBM-930 didn't model it at all. So first off, let's actually talk about that. Microsoft Flight Simulator natively does not support beta range. Okay, so with the TBM-930, we didn't really have anything. You just had idle thrust. Okay, BlackSquare has gotten around that limitation and implemented their own solution to creating the beta range. And again, the idea behind it is, as you guys know, turboprops, think about any turboprop you've flown in the sims thus far. Once you get them rolling, the next trick is getting them to slow down, right? It doesn't matter. You can pull the throttles to idle, and usually they'll just keep on taking off, right? They just go off on you. That's where this beta range comes in. What it is essentially pitches the propeller, if my understanding is correct, pitches the propeller to a point where, it is no longer able to generate any thrust, therefore making it easier to maintain, either A, create drag using the propeller, or B, maintain taxi speed, make those things a little bit easier. So they have fixed the blade angle values to match the propeller's twist to a point where it reaches what they call net zero thrust, which is, again, no thrust being generated by the propeller. They also resolved an issue where erroneous torque effects caused by the native engine simulation were filtered out. So they've really done a really awesome job. And again, they specify that this should make taxiing the aircraft and maintaining taxi speed should be significantly easier moving forward for us. All right, moving on. Like, they've done a ton with this, you guys. Improved turbine engine dynamics. The torque decrease with altitude has been increased. This was actually this is one of the things that I have to adjust now, because it's actually changed the behavior of the engine as it climbs. So let's talk about the torque decrease with altitude has been increased and now decreases for a maximum or from a maximum, of 140% possible engine torque at sea level to a maximum now of 90% torque available at flight level 300 or 30,000 feet. Okay, so what does this mean? So, for example, the TBM-850 why is it called the 850? It's called the 850 because it has 850 horsepower. At 850 horsepower, for example, according to our climb charts, we actually climb out at 121.4% engine torque. The higher we go, though, that torque starts to fall off a little bit, and you have to increase the engine power to bring your torque back up without increasing the ITT, which we're going to get into ITT again in a minute here. Basically, your inlet temperature, inner turbine temperature. So as we continue to climb, you should lose the ability to reach that 121% engine torque. Okay, so now, and they mentioned this, now maximum allowable torque of 120% is attainable until around flight level 260. Sudden momentary changes in the torque now at high altitude were caused by a miscalculated configuration value. So that has been resolved, which means now we're going to get the proper torque fall off as we continue to ascend. ITT increase with altitude has also been increased, and this is where we start talking about that engine power. So as we climb, our total available torque starts to fall off, requiring you to add more engine power in order to maintain the torque. Well, what should happen is as you increase the engine power, your inner turbine temperature should increase. So the engine's going to get hotter and hotter and hotter as you try harder and harder and harder to maintain the 121% engine torque. Okay, so we're not going to be able to do that anymore, right? The engine has a maximum temperature, we want to keep it below 850 degrees Celsius, while we're climbing or running through. So let's talk about some real world values here so this makes a little bit more sense to you guys. With a real world experience at 30,000 feet, torque was at 90%, RPMs at 2,000, outside air temperature at 26 degrees Celsius, and the bleed on auto. ITT was 800 degrees Celsius. Under the exact same conditions, they were able to get Microsoft Flight Simulator to 804 degrees Celsius. That's pretty damn close. That's freaking awesome. So they really done a great job. And the ITT will also increase even higher if the bleed switch is in the high position. So, for example, if your internal temperature of the cabin is really hot and you need to cool it down quickly, you might set the bleed air to high. Another example would be pressurization. If your pressurization falls off for any reason or you get a pressurization alarm, you would turn your bleed air to high to increase the pressure of the aircraft more quickly. Anyway, so really cool stuff. All right, so this goes on and on. Propeller torque effects on takeoff have been increased. The torque effects were actually correctly simulated, they said, in the previous version or the initial release of the TBM-850. But, I love this, so I'm going to quote it. But we're being suppressed by an overzealous ASOBO assistance feature meant to make flying the aircraft with strong torque effects like the TBM-930, for example, easier for a novice pilot. And once again, I'm going to give a big shout out to, and they actually specify here, thank you, JD. As you guys know, JD's from, the multiple mods that he has on FlightSim.to. Absolutely amazing developer. But they did thank him for helping test and tweak all of the changes above with dozens of iterations in just the last week. So we're going to give a big shout out to JD as well as to BlackSquare. Let's see here. So St. Elmo fire and static discharge. This is really cool. I'm looking forward to trying this one out. We're going to have to find a video and do this one or fly through a storm. When aircraft fly quickly through, and I'm just reading this to you guys because it's perfectly explained. When aircraft fly quickly through areas of charged particles such as thunderstorms, the metal airframe can accumulate significant charge. When this charge becomes great enough, electrostatic discharges may occur over the sharp areas of the aircraft, such as the cockpit windshields. The static wicks or other sharp areas of the aircraft may also glow purple with a corona discharge. Which can precede larger discharges across the windshields. And this is called the St. Elmo's fire. So This is going to be cool to see. If you guys haven't seen anything, go on just Google St. Elmo's fire and then go to the images section at the top and check it out because it's actually really impressive. It's a really interesting phenomena to check out. So anyway, let's go ahead and keep moving on. So they added de-icing boots as well as animation using the boots. They've improved icing effects on just about all the surfaces: windshield, heated cowlings, and boots. Ice on the windows will now crystallize from the outside in, and airframe ice will remain on the leading edge until it's basically shed by the de-icing boots. Heated cowlings will now de-ice separately from the rest of the de-icing systems. They've added wheel chocks, which we'll turn on here in just a second. Let's go ahead and do that now, actually, here. So I have not checked them out myself. They said they're behind the seat where they are stowed. So let's do this. Boop. Did I go too far? I bet you. Oh, they're behind. I bet you they're behind the rear seat. That would make sense. Yep. Click them. Come out. And there they are. Wheel chocks in place. Cool. So again, a nice little feature. And you guys know how I feel about these kind of things. I'm actually getting ready to do another test with our guide here soon. So I'm going to get this door open so the cabin doesn't get too freaking hot. Because I guarantee it's starting to cook in here. So let me open these doors up because I'm going to be running through the guide again, getting it ready for its final testing and release, which I'm super excited about. Might as well open everything up. Just check it out. Boom. And there's our plane that we would walk up to. How awesome is that? Anyway, continuing on. Actually, let's just leave that out. Let's see what other amazing changes. They've really done a lot here, you guys. I lost my PDF. And by the way, all this information is available in their PDF documentation. If you guys own the aircraft, download the latest version of it and then go back to your docs and it'll have the updated documentation. Here's another cool one. And this did not take long to hit flightsim.to. And this is a perfect example of a developer who is listening to his community, who is paying attention to what mods are being put out for their aircraft and saying, wow, this must be something that's actually needed. So check this out. Improved exterior lighting with brighter landing lights and taxi lights. The landing lights are now visible from inside the cockpit and look better from a distance. Here's another shout out from the developer. Thank you to FlightSim.to user EatPizza2 for the idea. Pretty sure EatPizza2 was the one who put a lighting mod out, if I'm not mistaken. Could be mistaken on that, but either way, they're listening, and it's nice. New custom strobe light effect. Or system, I should say. Just as in the real world, strobe light volumetric effects are now visible at night or on dark nights. The strobe lights will now become disorientingly bright flashes surrounding the aircraft while operating in clouds, especially at night. Finally, you have a reason to heed the warning turn the strobe lights off when operating in clouds with low visibility. And that's legit. That's a real thing. It's sort of like people who turn their brights on a foggy day when they're driving down the road. You're not supposed to do that. Why? Because it blinds you and everybody around you. It's almost like water reflects. I'm not sure what that's about. Anyway, solar calculations for display backlighting. Check this one out. So solar calculations for display backlighting have been added for a much smoother dimming effect during sunrise and sunset. Unlike other third-party implementations, here it comes, guys. This takes all factors into account, including leap years and the freaking Earth's tilt. Like, cool. Talk about putting the detail into the littlest things and turning them into something amazing. Residual heat in the engine will now be suppressed by the gas generator during cooling, but some residual heat will return after the airflow subsides. Default co-pilot character can now be toggled on while in the cockpit using the crew music. Let's go ahead and go back in there. Now, I have my co-pilots and animations disabled in the sim, so I don't know if this is going to work or not for me, but let's see. Crew music. Nope, he's there. I just saw him. There you go. Or her. Sorry. So, boom, that little switch there. Get you your co-pilot. Ranger, if you're watching, I got Penelope. Anyway, so let's, I think that pretty much sums up the big ones that I wanted to talk to you about, guys, because this is pretty awesome stuff. They have a ton of bug fixes. that are going to improve the overall enjoyment of the simulator. Oh, here's one more. The control wheel steering button. This guy right here. The control wheel steering buttons on the yokes can now be used to synchronize the indicated airspeed. Okay. Where was I? Can you say airspeed holding value with the aircraft's current indicated airspeed? So, basically, if you want the aircraft to hold at 140 knots, you press that button and the autopilot hold speed will adjust, is the way I'm reading that. So, again, these are the reasons why I had to do another flight, add some more things to the guide, make a couple of changes. The trim, again, that looks just about the way it was before, so I don't really understand what changed there. It looks, I mean, it must have changed just barely. But anyways, that is another incredible development from the team over at BlackSquare. Super excited for this, guys. I can't wait to see how they continue to develop this aircraft. I will tell you that this aircraft has been absolutely an amazing experience to fly. If you're using it, I highly recommend. Oh, that was the other thing. They've actually implemented the working title GNS 530 as, I believe, their default avionics system, as the original legacy GNS 530 is no longer compatible with the aircraft, and I don't think it ever was. I actually noticed a few issues with it when I tried to use it. Because I was initially going to do it with a default in case people didn't want to use the working title, but to be quite frank, you'd be silly not to use the working title version. It's that good. But again, guys, I hope that you guys have found this video useful. I hope you're just excited for the continued development of this aircraft as I am. If you have not picked up your copy of it yet and you're able to, I highly, highly recommend it. It's an astonishing aircraft, incredibly well modeled, and I'm very, very grateful to have it in my hangar. As always, guys, stay safe and healthy, and I shall see you in the next one, which will be very soon.